My name's Eric, and we're going to talk about 17 different hacks that you can do for your GPR/SPR to make you a more effective rifleman. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another HatchetCast episode, and today we're going to be talking about 17 different hacks that you can do for your GPR/SPR that's going to make you a more effective rifleman. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel, and also comment your hacks and things that you like to do for your rifle down below. It really does help out the group, so carry on the conversation by commenting below. So we're going to be breaking this up into four different categories. We're going to have hardware hacks and sighting systems, rifleman remedies, soft gear, and survival tips. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in to hardware hacks and sighting systems. All right, so when it comes to hardware, some things that I have found as far as equipment-wise that's very, very useful is the bipod, but specifically what's attached to the Harris bipod. Now, one of the reasons why I love the Harris bipod is for a hack that I do with the bipod specifically, and that is adding string, and I tie a set of paracord or 550 cord to both legs so they're tethered together. And when I tie that, it allows me to be able to pull one leg and it will deploy both legs because the string will actually pull on the other leg if I pull on one side. So this allows me to be able to deploy the bipod with one hand versus trying to use and deploy one leg at a time. It's just a very fast way to be able to get the bipod deployed. And also I will take like sports tape or athletic tape and I will wrap around the knots on the bipod legs itself. So it is a really, really cool hack. I didn't invent it. I actually took it from some other guys who are really, really smart. I do have, and a lot of guys ask like, well, what do you think about the Atlas? With the Atlas bipod, you physically have to push the button on each leg to be able to deploy it. So you can't really do a quick deploy, at least not that I know of. So that's why the Harris has been a really helpful bipod system. Now, when it comes to the Harris bipod, there's a lot of copycat ones out there. There's a lot of fake ones out there. We've tried them, tried like the Caldwell bipod, and it's actually snapped, and other bipods that you can get on Amazon. Some folks might have good luck with it, but we've not had good luck with the aftermarket or off-brand versions of the Harris bipod, and they usually aren't reliable. So if you're going to run a piece of equipment on your rifle, you want to make sure that it's reliable, that it's not going to break on you. And so we recommend the Harris bipod, and honestly, for however much, 89 bucks, this thing has lasted for years. So you're technically making an investment in a piece of equipment that could literally last you your lifetime and something that you can hand off to your kids. 2, 1.
That was 3 impacts.
That was 3 impacts.
Hey, dude, sick. But yeah, that's a really, really cool hack I like doing with my bipod, is doing the 550 cord or paracord hack where I can do a quick deploy system. Now, something else that I have on the bipod is the American Defense Manufacturing QD or quick detach mount. So what that allows me to do is I can detach and reattach the bipod with one hand. Now, when I use this QD, I have it set to the correct setting where it's not super tight, where I don't have to crank it on or try to pry it off. I like to have it on there just enough where it doesn't come loose, and it's not wobbling all over the place, but tight, loose enough where I can just, disconnect it with one hand, put it into a pouch on my chest rig, so that way, one, it makes the rifle a little bit lighter, For competition, if I don't need the bipod for trying to work the stage, or I'm trying to get through a small port, I can quick detach that bipod with one hand and then reattach it on the go. One of the things that's really cool about American Defense Manufacturing's QD mount is they actually have a locking system in their lever, so you don't accidentally bump that lever. In theory, now I've heard of some guys doing it for whatever reason. It's just by some crazy circumstance that it ends up coming off, but that is few and far between. So I definitely recommend getting the QD system for that. There's a ton of other QD systems out there, but my favorite one is the American Defense Manufacturing one. We've also used the, I can't remember what name of the company, but it's like a QD M-Lock one, and that one's a little bit more, requires a little more like dexterity and a little bit more precision with your fingers and where you place them. But I've also seen those pop out of M-Lock, so I like this because it's very robust, it's super sturdy, it locks onto that 1913 rail, and is rock solid once you have it on there. So if you're looking to get a QD, the American Defense Manufacturing QD for the Harris bipod is awesome. Now, something else that I get a lot of questions about is the sighting system, as far as like a backup dot or a red dot. So the question has always been, do you top mount it, or do you have it at a 45? And for me, what I do is I take the pros and cons list of both ways of doing the dot, and I just list it out, and I just say, hey, what has more pros and what has, either maybe none of them have cons, or maybe it's only a couple of cons, but the pros list is longer for one versus the other. So, we used to run 45 angled dots, and I'm still pro 45 angled dot. In fact, I think it's actually a good way to have a backup sighting system outside of iron sights that you can add. Technically, if you're running backup iron sights, you're running a top-mounted dot, and you're running a scope, you're running 3 sighting systems already. So if you don't want to run backup irons, you could always run a dot at a 45 and top-mount a dot. Call me crazy, but if we're already running 3 sighting systems, why not just make it where it's a solar red dot that's mounted at 45? Just my opinion, not the gospel. But for a 45 mounted dot, you do get that speed. It is really low to the bore axis, so it's not a crazy height over bore. It's kind of out of the way in a lower profile. But the biggest thing you get out of it is speed, right? So when it comes to running that 45 angle dot, that's something that I have seen in classes where folks that have that mounted, if you're not training using that thing all the time, most people will have it with in combination with an LPVO or something of that nature. And most of the time, they'll try and crank the LPVO down to 1x and run that instead of running their 45 angled red dot. So, if you're not training that dot system all the time, it's kind of forgotten about and ends up being an unnecessary piece of equipment on your rifle. So if you're gonna run a 45, you really gotta train it and kind of ingrain in your mind to immediately go to that for targets that are closer distance than what you want to engage with an LPVO or a scope. So, obviously the one pro obviously you get out of that is speed. It's out of the way, it's small, you can use it as a backup sight. For us, I like to run a top-mounted red dot, not because it has less cons than the 45, but I think it's got a few more pros than a 45 angled red dot. And one of the things is it's very intuitive. It's right there in my peripheral vision. I don't find it that it's too much in the way at all. The only time that you end up running into a complication with it maybe is if you're running a VTAC barricade and you have to roll the rifle over. The height over bore is pretty drastic. So that is the one con for it, is you have a very drastic height over bore that you have to consider, and also rolling it over, it is definitely challenging. So having an angled 45 red dot would reign supreme, one because of the lower bore axis, or lower to the bore, but it's also easy because you're rolling that rifle over, that dot's almost straight up and down. It's very intuitive to be able to run the rifle sideways. But when we run the top dot, it's really cool to be able to find a target in my red dot, see it, get it on my dot on there, and then drop down into my scope. So it's really good for finding those targets versus trying to find a target zoomed in on a scope and you're looking through a soda straw. So I like having that big picture view of looking through a dot, getting the dot on my target, and then dropping into my scope. The other thing that's really cool about it is the ability to run passive when wearing a gas mask or when wearing night vision. So if you're wearing night vision and you're engaging, if I have a 45 angle dot, we've seen people do it, but it's just not very fast and effective. Where they're trying to angle, run that angled red dot and get in behind it, but it's just so low that their night vision is bumping into the back of their scope or bumping into their gun, and there's a lot of frustration. So having that higher mounted dot system, that top mounted dot, allows for you to have more of a heads up display when you're aiming passive with night vision, and also a gas mask. A gas mask, you get all this stuff on your face, you got filters, you got a hose, if you're running a filtered unit on your back. And so that stuff gets in the way, so having a higher mounted system just makes it a little bit easier to be able to aim the rifle while you have all that extra equipment on. So the fact that we can do that, plus drop into our scope and utilize that as part of our aiming process and our shooter's checklist, makes the top mounted dot solution very attractive. And that's why we run it pretty much on every single gun that we use. So it really is really nice. The other thing also is when I have my my dot angled at a 45, I have to really make sure that the rifle is not over exaggerated or under exaggerated on that angle, and that I have the dot perfectly straight up and down for when I'm zeroing it. If I have it top mounted, it's pretty easy, obviously, because it's already intuitive to what I'm zeroing my primary scope system at, or sighting system. So there is no rolling the rifle over and trying to make sure, as bad as a 45 degree. Like I said, still a huge fan of the 45 angle dot. I'm probably going to add that into the rifle just as a backup sighting system. And if you have it as a solar system, now it's, doesn't depend on battery life. It can actually run for a long period of time. So as far as sighting system, love running a top mounted dot, and those are the reasons as to why I like that. Now, something else that I like to run on an SPR or a GPR is a micro level. So a micro level, what that does is it helps make sure that the rifle is level as possible, especially if I'm making those shots at distance. Having a slight tilt in that rifle when I'm making those shots, we see it a lot in class, ends up throwing those shots off, especially as you stretch out over distance. So remember, you zero that rifle straight up and down. So if you have any cant in there, that's another variable that you're adding into your engagement when you're shooting at targets over distance. So with SPRs and GPRs, special purpose rifle or general purpose rifle, we are going to be more comfortable engaging targets at distance, especially with the SPR. And so having every advantage and all the variables taken out of our shooting solution is going to be super important. So having just a small little level that's kind of tucked in out of the way. I have a Knight's Armament level, but there's tons of different levels that you can buy that are real small, out of the way, that you can add into your GPR SPR. I've even seen some levels that are like scope mounted, that just gives you a little bit more assurance that your rifle is situated perfectly for that engagement. So I recommend getting a micro level dot. It's something that we've always run on our systems, and it's been very, very helpful. So, these are some of the hardware hacks that I like having on the rifle. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the rifleman remedies and things that I as a rifleman like to do on my SPR that just helps me to have a little bit more of an advantage. So when it comes to things that I like to have as a rifleman, one of them is my dope. And I like to have my dope, or which data on previous engagement, like a roughed dope or data, somewhere on my rifle. So whether that's inside of a scope cap, if I have a scope cap on the back and I have it flipped in, it's out of the way when I close it. But there's a little sticker that you can actually get from Sobchak Security that has a scope cap dope card that you can put inside of your scope caps, and it allows you to have data that's real easy and to reference on the rifle itself. A lot of guys will run a dope card on their, like a quarterback sleeve on their arm, and that's super helpful to be able to have more dope. But sometimes it's nice to just be able to have data also directly on the rifle itself. So if I'm in a pinch and I need to grab the rifle, I always have that dope on the rifle with me. Understand, the dope also needs to be consistently updated. So, you know, this is just a generalized dope from all of the data that I've gathered on this rifle with specific ammo types. And this is a general, most in the middle averages of my dope. So for me, I like to have my dope here on the stock. And on this fixed stock, I've actually taken gaffer's tape or medical tape and wrapped it around the stock. And I'll talk about why I did that. But it made it really, really easy to be able to draw with a Sharpie marker on my stock and also utilize paint marker to have kind of a mini dope card on the stock itself. If you're worried about it being a color that's going to give you away if you're trying to blend in, you can always take Velcro and create a Velcro hide flap, similar to how you have on your sniper sleeves, but you can create that on your stock. I've seen guys do that, or utilize the scope cap dope card, so that way when you have that thing closed, it's tucked in out of the way and not something that's going to be picked up while you're walking through the woods. So I really do like that. Now, something that we've been prototyping, and it's just a super simple and a very cheap way to have quick reference data. We use it a lot for competitions, and it's really, really convenient, is a dope card holder. And that's what this is here on the side. It's a super simple design where it allows us to have our dope for reference, and it actually utilizes a dry erase card, so that way I can say, for example, I'm getting ready to engage targets at 300, 400, and 600, and I have to do quick engagements and I need to shift targets really quick. Well, if I need to look at my stock, it may be a little bit slower, so I'm just going to write the distances and the dope for that distance after I've ranged it on a quick reference card, so that way I can just look at it quickly, dial it, or hold it and make those shots as needed, and then it's dry erase, so I can erase that and save it for later. I've spray painted the outside of mine so it blends in a little bit more, but it is something that's really convenient for like competitions, and we kind of created it not as like an end-all be-all, but just an extra tool that you guys can utilize if you want to, whether you're shooting competitions or hunting or whatever. So we just wanted to make sure that was available to you guys, and also a very affordable option to be able to have on your rifle that helps make you a more effective rifleman. Now, I talked about the gaffer's tape that I put on the stock itself, and this is a fixed M16 style stock. And I've taken that medical tape and I've wrapped it around the stock because I actually have a small piece of fabric, like t-shirt material, that's inside that I've made a cheek riser for. And I haven't made it where it's big enough to be hard getting my face down on the stock as I need to. But this helps me with my natural point of aim, and I just gaffer's taped over the stock to be able to keep this homemade cheek riser in place. So for me, I like using these homemade cheek risers specifically for my SPR because it's pliable. It has some give versus like a plastic riser. It doesn't really have any give, and there's only set heights that you can buy those at. So this is super cheap. It's a very affordable option, and is also completely custom to my face. So it aids me in my natural point of aim and being more consistent with that. So that's just something that I've done, and that's why I have the gaffer's tape. Gaffer's tape is just a great thing to have all around, and also it helps cut down on that shine, especially after I spray paint it, but something that I like doing. Now, something else that you can do that is just a cool, quick hack is inside of my pistol grip, or on my GPR and my SPR, I have spare lube inside of there. So you can use either a small lube bottle. I actually like to have a disposable lube packet, so it's like a one-time use. And so if I have to bust that out, I can get rid of it. It doesn't shake and make noise. And then I also have a spare bolt inside of my pistol grip. And the reason why I've had a spare bolt is I've seen it so many times in classes or in competitions. Bolts just fail, you know. Sometimes you're in the stress of the moment, and you know, Murphy has his say in all things with Murphy's Law, and things will break. So having a spare bolt in your pistol grip especially if you're like taking a class and your bolt breaks, there is nothing more disheartening than that. You know, you get screwed out of training. And so having a spare bolt helps keep you inside that training class or in that competition and allows you to be able to fix your problem on the fly. And then having that spare lube packet inside of the pistol grip helps make the bolt not make any noise. If you need to, you can put some tissues in there, or maybe like a lens cloth inside of it, or a small cleaning rag. That way it's not shaking around in your pistol grip and making noise when you're walking around. So keeping extra lube and a spare bolt in your pistol grip is a great way to stay in the fight. Now, you know, as you grow as a rifleman, and for those of you who've been shooting for a while, you know that anything that can be tightened down can also be loosened up. So I will physically take a paint marker and I will make indication marks on my screws and anything that can come loose. So that way, if that screw starts to back off, the indication mark line will actually be broken, and I can go and re-tighten that down before it falls off or I have a big problem. So I've seen it in class tons of times where guys will be shooting and a light will fall off, or their PEC will fall off, or a laser, and it's just so common. And it's just a really easy way to make sure that you can do a quick check on your equipment before you go to the range, before you get ready for battle, before you do a competition, and it's just an easy way to do it. I like to use gold paint because white sticks out quite a bit, so gold blends in a little bit better, but I will use a paint marker to make those indication marks on every single screw, so that way I'm never caught by surprise by something coming loose and falling off. At the end of the day, guys, whenever you're doing these indication marks, it's just a process that you can add into your shooter's checklist. So, you know, just like a pilot, if you're getting ready to fly, they have a checklist that they go through and check everything on that checklist before they take off. So, you know, if this is a life-saving piece of equipment, you might want to do a checklist and do a once-over on your rifle before you take it out, especially if you're in preparedness or if you don't want to lose that competition or, you know, get screwed out of class. So having those indication marks really does help out a lot. So, you know, those are just some of the rifleman remedies that I've discovered over the years through hard knocks. But the other thing that's really important is our soft gear that I have on the rifle. So let's talk about that next. So on this rifle is one of the most important pieces of equipment, and to me, it's like the holster for the rifle. You know, like holsters are very important when it comes to pistol shooting. Slings are very important when it comes to rifles. And you want to make sure that you don't skimp out on your sling. Having a good sling goes so far, and I like to utilize the contour sling from Lunar Concepts, and it's actually available at Wiseman Company. So you guys can go check out Wiseman Company and pick up a contour sling. And what's really nice about the contour slings is it has some padding, and it has padding in the right spot, and it's also contoured to your body, whether you're a left-hand shooter or a right-hand shooter. So they have left-handed versions and right-handed versions. I'm a left-handed shooter anyways, and it is really, really nice. The padding on this is very, very tight. It's not a ton of padding where it's sloppy or just extra material that bunches up. I found, you know, especially if you're rucking in the woods and you've got this sling, that thing bunching up under your rucksack or under your gear is such a pain in the butt. But it's stiff enough where if I'm sliding that sling around, it doesn't get caught. So if you guys check out some of our AR, you know, carbine hacks that we did a video on a couple weeks ago, we talk about sling manipulation a lot, and you know, we talk about the contour sling specifically. But having a good slider on a sling is really, really important, and I like having a sling that works well for me because I can even use that sling to add additional stability to the rifle if I need to make distance shots from a standing position or for whatever reason. So a good sling goes a long way, and the contour sling is one of my favorites. Now on the contour sling specifically is what's called the prison pocket, which is also an accessory you can get at Wiseman Company and is made by Lunar Concepts. And the prison pocket is just like a small little pouch that you can attach onto your sling, and it's just like for that, you know, spare battery or extra extra lube, or even throwing a spare bolt in there. So if you don't have a pistol grip that has a bolt or compartment inside of it, you can utilize the prison pocket to be able to have those spare things on your sling, which stays with your rifle. So having a prison pocket, super convenient. It's just another way to have backup items stored with the gun itself, so that way you're never, you know, out of luck whenever you do competition training or you carry a gun for a living. Now, the last thing about the soft gear that I think is really, really nice is also, again, at Wiseman Company and is made by Lunar Concepts, and it's called the Bubba Tab. I don't know where that name came from, but it's kind of funny. But the Bubba Tab is a way to retain the sling to the rifle when you're storing it. So if you have it in your vehicle, it uses bungee and just fabric, and is a quick, easy way to be able to stow your sling close to the rifle, and then an easy way to deploy that sling in a pinch. So, you know, having that sling inside of your car or in your gear or whatever, with that sling flopping all over the place, is kind of annoying. If you don't want to get a Bubba Tab, you can also do the sling trick where you do it around your pistol grip. I've seen that as well. But the Bubba Tab it's such an easy way to be able to keep that sling nice and stowed away, nice and neat. So that way when you need to deploy it, it's not getting hung up or caught. So that's some of the soft gear things that I like to have on my GPRs and SPRs. But the next thing we need to talk about is some survival tips and things that you can have to increase your survivability with your rifle, so that way you don't have contrast and stick out like a sore thumb. So let's talk about that next. All right, so when it comes to your rifle and survival tips, the obvious one is camouflage. And the easiest way to camouflage your rifle is to paint it. The big thing is we actually produced a video about painting your rifle, and we talked about in depth how to paint your rifle so that way it matches your environment wherever you live. So the big takeaway is make sure that you have things that break up straight lines, that break up that signature of the gun. Now, when it comes to the camouflage pattern, whatever you pick, having scrim on your rifle, which is essentially long string. I have actually taken scrim from a buddy of mine that I got, Ghost 5 Tactical Q. He's the one that taught us a lot about camouflage techniques, and he's an Army sniper prior, so really, really good information. But he gave us some scrim that you can actually get at like a military surplus store. There's also scrim that you can buy on Amazon, but it has like a shiny keen to it or whatever. It's got a shininess to the fabric. So if you're going to use that, it's like yarn, you got to make sure that you spray paint it to cut all that shine. But I like using this scrim, and I also have some burlap from a burlap sack that I cut up and I wrapped around the rifle scope. Now you can actually use the string of the scrim to do tie downs. And I also have hair ties on my scope and on my rifle to be able to insert vegetation from my environment on the fly. So I can camouflage this rifle up as much as I want to by throwing the vegetation inside the hair ties to be able to give me more camouflage to break up my signature. The rifle really does stick out, and we actually, even in our night vision class, we will have Roy or one of the students kind of walking towards the group from like 300 yards out, and we'll have them say like, hey, when can you see, one, the person walking towards you under night vision, and also can you PID if he's holding anything? And most of the time when guys have black rifles, because those black rifles contrast so much against the body or against the environment, it's really easy to spot from a far away distance. But if you have that rifle painted, it's really hard to PID that. So just painting your rifle and having scrim on there to break up the outline and those straight lines and make it look more like a natural piece of nature is super important. So having hair ties on your scope and having hair ties on your rifle itself, just up and down the rifle length, is a quick way to add in vegetation if you want to camouflage that rifle up. Now, in the past, I did use like a rubber tire, and I've also used rubber bands, like black rubber bands. And the one problem that I ran into with those specifically is they eventually dry rot and they come off. So the hair ties just last longer. They blend in really nice, so make sure you get like, you know, brown hair ties or whatever. But using rubber bands and also those inner tube things going in and out. The inner tubes last a lot longer than the rubber bands, but the rubber bands, they disintegrate pretty quickly, probably after about a month or 2 months, depending on how much you're using that rifle, you know, taking it outside, taking it back inside, vice versa. So just something to think about. Now, something else to increase survivability, and you know, if you're going to be shooting things at distance, the last thing you want is something to glare off of your scope or your flashlight. So we use, on my red dot here on top, I have the 100 Concepts kill flash that's on this Vortex Crossfire. And on my Trijicon Credo, I actually have a homemade kill flash that allows me to be able to see through the scope if I have it deployed, but I can also flip it out of the way if I want more clarity and let more light into the scope itself. So you can actually cut that. I cut a rectangle on another scope that I have on my Steiner. I've actually done more of a blotchy pattern, so it looks like a circle but with jagged edges all over it. So that way there's no straight lines, and also it allows that light to not hit the front of the scope or the red dot and create shine. We've actually seen, you know, where we've tested it out, you can literally see that glint from really, really far away if you're not careful. So the last thing you want is to be given away and, you know, have a bunch of fire incoming on your position because you did not cover up that the flash on that scope. The other thing that will give away your position is also having that light hit your flashlight. So make sure we use a 100 Concepts light cap. And they actually have a great tutorial for how to install that. But I will use that one, not just for my white light NDing and giving away my position at night or even during the day, but also to cover up that ability for light to hit that light face and create reflection. So I will put that light cap on there and I have it tucked in out of the way, so that way it doesn't give away where I'm at if light happens to hit my position. So something else that we added into our list of things that we have with us on our rifle is the ability to have some quick scrim. So if you don't have vegetation near you, or you don't have, if you just want to add a little bit more camouflage to your rifle, this is 3D printed rifle wrap scrim that is from Cargical Tactical. And we actually had these in stock on the website. We're probably going to restock these. This one is an ATAX pattern, and it's really, really nice. What I love about this one is the material is laser cut, so it's actually pretty strong, but it's also doesn't absorb water. So if you get this wet or whatever, it's not going to add weight to your rifle. It's super, super light, and I can bunch it up. I can throw it in my chest rig. I can throw it in a cargo pocket, and I can deploy this quick scrim if I need to. It can go on the scope. You can wrap it around the entire rifle, whatever you want. But it's a really, really fast way to deploy some form of camouflage on your rifle to help break up your outline and make you blend in better. But like I said, guys, none of this stuff is rocket science. It's all things that are just pretty practical things to think about. The biggest thing is you want to be more effective as a rifleman by thinking about all the small things, because it's the small things that will screw you over in the long run. So as many variables as I can remove, the less that Murphy's Law can have a hold on me whenever I'm at the range or whenever I'm doing stuff out in my environment. So guys, make sure you go out and you train. That's the biggest thing. You can do all this stuff, but none of it matters if you're not training. Go check the Barrel and Hatchet website to sign up for classes with us. We love teaching you guys and working with you and training with you. We do have some scope carbine classes coming up, so make sure you check the calendar for that. And also go check out our Hatchet Cast podcast channel on YouTube. It's a separate channel. The same information and podcasts that are on there are also on Spotify, so you can find Hatchet Cast on Spotify, as well as any behind the scenes type stuff that we're doing at Barrel and Hatchet, like in-stock information for, you know, gear, clothing, swag. You can check that on X and our Instagram page. Also, when you guys are checking out the website, go pick up a hat, go pick up a shirt. It's a great way to support the channel. And also, you can pick up some gear. So we do have like Cargical sniper boonie hats. We have this stuff that will be coming back in stock, as well as some ghost chest rigs. And also the dope cards will be coming back in stock or be released on the site here soon. So if you want to support the channel, it's a great way to do it. But at the end of the day, guys, apply these skill sets and things to your rifle to make you more effective. At the end of the day, we all need to be more effective riflemen so that way we can be a better asset to our community and to those around us. So make sure you guys go out and train. Make sure you're the asset, not the liability. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next one.